News, though, that's breaking as we've been speaking here. This is coming from Israel that carried out what it is describing as a targeted strike in Lebanon, killing a senior Hezbollah military commander. This is Israel hit Lebanon yesterday, launching 140 rockets in an effort to weaken Hezbollah's arsenal. It comes after 2 days of deadly attacks earlier this week in Lebanon, where some 5,000 pagers and walkie-talkies exploded, killing that latest report at least 37 people, including 2 children, and injuring close to 3,000. My colleague there in Tel Aviv is NBC international correspondent Raf Sanchez. He's joining us now. Raf, there is more reporting that we're learning about this strike. What can you tell us?
Peter, Israel is saying that it struck and killed Ibrahim Akil, one of Hezbollah's top military commanders, a man who Israel says was responsible for attacks on this country since the October 7th Hamas massacre. They are saying he was meeting in a cellar in Dahya in southern Beirut, a Hezbollah stronghold, with senior members of the Radwan unit, that is Hezbollah's most elite military unit. And Israel is claiming that the strike killed not just Akil, but also the top chain of command of the Radwan unit. Now, that has not yet been confirmed by Hezbollah. This was a major strike, Peter, first of all, for its location. The fact that it happened in Beirut, where Israel has largely refrained from striking over the course of the war, that is a major, major red line for Hezbollah. It is likely to draw a serious response. But this was also a big strike in terms of the ordnance use. This was not a small drone launching a small missile. This was Israeli warplanes over the capital of Lebanon dropping heavy ordnance. At least 9 people have been killed, according to the Lebanese Public Health Ministry, some 50 injured. And you can see in some of the footage from the ground in South Beirut that parts of whole buildings have collapsed here. So this is a major blow struck against Hezbollah if it is confirmed that Akil was killed. It is also a major escalation by Israel. And we should say, Peter, that Akil is also a man who is of interest to the United States. There was a $7 million bounty on his head for his alleged involvement in the bombing of both the U.S. Embassy and the U.S. Marine Barracks in Beirut in 1983. Wow. So there will be no tears shed in Washington, the elimination of this individual if it is confirmed. Peter.
Wow, his history dates back, as you indicate, to that awful day for the American service members there. Raf Sanchez with the very latest. Raf, thank you. And joining me now is Mark Polymeropoulos, who spent years as a CIA officer, including as chief of operations in Europe and Eurasia. Colin Clark joins us as well, director of research at the Soufan Group. Mark, I want to get to you just the reaction to what we just heard right now about these latest these strikes taking place in Beirut, targeting this Hezbollah commander in a cellar there. Turns out the Israelis say that he was with other senior leadership of Hezbollah. How big of a strike is this, and what risk does it pose to the potential for a wider war in that region?
So, first of all, Peter, Ibrahim Akil is someone the CIA, the U.S. intelligence community, know very well. He has a lot of American blood on his hands. As Ralph noted, responsible for the deaths of 241 American servicemen and servicewomen in the 1983 Hezbollah bombing of the Marine Corps barracks, and then the bombing of the U.S. Embassy in Beirut, where CIA officers and U.S. diplomats were killed as well. This is a very bad individual, and frankly, the Israelis, served some justice for Americans, for the families of those who've been killed. Again, this is someone that the CIA knew very, very well. What does it mean overall? And this is kind of going to present day. I mean, Akil was in charge of the Radwan forces. That's Hezbollah's special forces. A unit that would sit along the border, that was seen, especially in the Israeli national security community, as a formidable adversary if Israel had to move into southern Lebanon. And it just goes once again to show, I think, how Israel has achieved almost kind of total intelligence dominance over Hezbollah. This has got to be getting into Hassan Nasrallah's head right now. Over the last 72 hours, some extraordinary operations, and it's clear to me that Israel is following the policy which they have done for some time over the years of escalating to de-escalate. They're making it so uncomfortable for Nasrallah, saying, if you want a wider war, this is what you're going to get. They're hoping that he stands down. The problem is, the adversary gets a vote, and it's still unclear what Nasrallah, and of course his patrons in Iran, it's unclear what they'll do.
Well, so Mark, that's where I want to drill down on that with Colin for a second. And all three of us, I'm sure, have spent a ton of time in that region. It's hard to even communicate to Americans just the tightness of the way that those countries are together, right? Gaza to Lebanon is only a matter of hours, the drive you can make from the southern border of Israel to the northern border of Israel with Lebanon. This is already a war-weary country right now with the potential to be dealing, Colin, with a second, conflict in real terms on its northern border. What concerns you about this and the potential, as I was asking Mark, about this thing exploding with Hassan Nasrallah now waiting for whatever the retaliation may be?
Look, I'm concerned about a broader conflagration, particularly one that drags in the United States. I think Hezbollah has to respond. There's nothing worse than showing weakness in the Middle East. Even if the response is performative or symbolic in nature, Hezbollah has to respond. Just an amazing kind of setup by the Israelis here with the pager and walkie-talkie explosions, disrupting Hezbollah's command and control, forcing them to meet in person, and then seemingly bombing that meeting of high-level individuals. So really an intelligence masterclass here by Mossad, by the Israelis, but the region's still on edge, waiting to see what happens next.